Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Today is exactly a week until Avengers Endgame is released in the UK. And I am unbelievably excited. I have been waiting for this film for so long now. As with the release of every new film that I'm excited about, I have come up with a ton of theories, and obviously none of them are going to be proven right because they never are. So let's get right on into this. My first theory is a theory about cyclical structure. Cyclical structure is a literary technique that I think is really cool, and basically what it is the place that the story starts is also the place that the story ends. So there's another literary technique involved in this theory that I've come up with, and that is frame narrative, which is also a really cool technique. So frame narrative is where you've got a story within a story within a story within however many stories you need to make it relevant. I propose that in Avengers Endgame, these two techniques, cyclical structure and frame narrative, are combined to create something that I've termed a narrative comprised of centric circles. Why is it that all my theories I come up with are the most convoluted things? This is why none of them come true. This is why. Anyway, this outermost circle you see in the diagram is actually not a theory. This is fact. This is canon, it's happened. And that is that the original 6 Avengers, Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Thor, Bruce Banner, Natasha Romanoff, and Clint Barton, are the ones who survived the snap. This is important, the fact that these 6 are the ones that survived, because it loops right back to the first time Thanos ever made contact with Earth, which he did via Loki, when he sent him down with the scepter, the Mind Stone, to go and steal the Tesseract, the Space Stone, off Nick Fury. This leaves them in exactly the same state that they were before Avengers Assemble. They were scattered across the globe, and in this case, across the universe, and have to come back together despite all odds to take down the greater threat, which is the same greater threat. It's always been Thanos. And despite the fact that they are scattered, and, you know, some of them have seemingly no way of getting back to the others, it will happen. And we can link this back to the dialogue between Maria Hill and Nick Fury at the end of Avengers Assemble. They've gone their separate ways. Some pretty extremely far. If we get into a situation like this again, what happens then? They'll come back. Are you really sure about that? I am. Why? Because we'll need them to. So, because they are needed to come back, no matter what has happened before, they will come back and they will reform just like in Avengers Assemble, and they will save the day. Because it's a Hollywood blockbuster and good always prevails. On to my second circle. And this one's actually theory this time. This is a theory. And it is regarding Tony Stark, or Iron Man. And this is in absolutely no way to do with the fact that Tony's my favourite Avenger. My love for Tony Stark has absolutely nothing to do with this. Absolutely not. I promise. In MCU canon, the first Avenger was Captain America. But in our reality, the first Avenger was Tony Stark. He had the first film. That is super important, because if that film didn't do well at the box office, the MCU may not have even happened. In my opinion, what better way would there be to honour everything that the character of Tony Stark has done for the MCU than by having him be the one to take down Thanos? So bringing it right back. It starts with Tony Stark and it will end with Tony Stark. And I probably should have done those hand gestures the other way, because I forgot the fact that my camera looks that way. This will also give his character, a chance to escape from his alter ego and everything that's been causing him pain, which, let's face it, there's a lot of that stuff. This escape may come through his own choice to retire or through his death. This will leave the MCU open for Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, to become the new face, which I am super excited about. That film was great. The third circle, the innermost circle, isn't my theory. It's a theory devised by Tumblr user Stark Raving Hazelnuts. Stark Raving Hazelnuts narrows the narrative even further to specific character arcs, and the characters that they are focusing on are Steve Rogers, Tony Stark, and Thor, who are known as the big three of the MCU. They propose with this theory that Steve Rogers' arc began with sacrifice. He sacrificed himself to win World War II by crashing his plane into the ice, and even before that he was always willing to sacrifice himself. In Endgame, Steve will sacrifice himself for the greater good yet again, bringing about his death and bringing about a full circle of his characterization. For Tony, his arc is all about survival. He survived in Afghanistan when he got kidnapped. He survived all those countless people that are trying to kill him. He survived palladium poisoning. He survived flying a nuclear bomb into a wormhole. I mean, I could go on forever about Tony Stark, but I won't. So what they propose for Tony is that he will survive Avengers Endgame, fingers crossed, and that will bring his arc right back around again. He started by surviving and he will end by surviving. With Thor, his characterization is about loss, or being lost and finding himself again. So if you remember in the first Thor film, he literally got banished to a planet that he'd never been to before, so he was literally lost, but he was also metaphorically lost within himself because he had to find who he truly was as a person. So this theory proposes that at the end of Endgame, Thor will be lost again. And this could be taken literally or metaphorically as well. He could be literally cast adrift somewhere, or metaphorically be lost because of all the pain and hardship that he's had to go through throughout the Infinity War and Endgame stories. Losing his brother, his family, his whole planet, all of that stuff. Loss. If my theory about Avengers Endgame having a narrative comprised of concentric circles is true, it will bring the MCU, or this era of the MCU, to a really nice close, having everything from wider points to really specific character arcs come back to where they started. And it'll bring it to a nice, neat close, ready to move on to whatever the next era has to bring. My second theory is about Einstein-Rosen bridges, which are wormholes. So links through space-time between one point of the universe to a completely other point of the universe. And obviously these are entirely theoretical, and as the name of them suggests, it was a theory devised by Einstein. And even if they did exist, they would be so small. Like, they would only exist on a molecular level, so you wouldn't actually be able to use them for travel, which is really disappointing, because they would be fun. And even if they were big enough to travel through, the force exerted on you would rip you apart, so not worth it, just take a plane. But that's in our world. In the MCU, these do exist, and we've seen countless examples of them. So I think the most obvious one is the literal wormhole opened in the sky in Avengers Assemble, opened by the Space Stone. And the Space Stone itself, every time it works, it creates a wormhole because its whole purpose is to transport matter from one place to another. Another example of these, which is probably my favourite example, is the Bifrost. So obviously the sword goes into the thing, it turns, it opens a wormhole. But what's really cool about this is the fact that the path to the Bifrost is a bridge, so it is a literal representation of an Einstein-Rosen bridge, which is just really cool. None of these methods allow you to travel through time, they only allow you to travel through space. What we go into here is the real point of this theory. The quantum realm, as described by Hank Pym as a reality where all concepts of space and time become irrelevant. This realm can be reached through a couple of methods that we've seen in the MCU so far, so either through Pym particles or through sling rings seen in Doctor Strange. But neither of these methods are particularly accessible. So what we get onto here is the bracelets that some of the actors were seen wearing during behind the scenes photos. And there hasn't actually been that much talk of these bracelets recently, but at the time I was writing this theory, that was all that was being talked about. Theoretically, it would be possible to use the power of the quantum realm to travel through space and time if it could be accurately harnessed. And of course we've seen in Ant-Man and the Wasp their way of safely travelling through the quantum realm. Now, if only they could have made it smaller. And that's where I think these bracelets come in. I think Scott's got out of the quantum realm, probably using the time vortexes, which we don't actually know very much about, but I'm sure they're going to be relevant. And he has told some of the smart people, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner. I wrote down Shuri at the time, but according to the posters, she's actually dead. So it'll be Tony and Bruce, and they'll have devised a way of getting this quantum realm technology into these small bracelets. And that way they can time travel, and that will be super useful. Time travel has been widely theorised as being the only way that the Avengers will possibly be able to get their dusted friends back. If these bracelets do in fact harness the power of the quantum realm, that will give them the power of not only the time stone, but the space stone as well. So by using the incredible power of science, they'll have created technology equivalent to 2 Infinity Stones, which, I mean, that gets them well on the way to defeating Thanos, and I think it's key. So that brings us to the end of my Avengers Endgame theories, and if you're wondering why I'm not dressed in the same stuff that I was in the rest of the video, it's because my phone decided to mess up the synchronization between the image and the audio. This is the end, so if you enjoyed, leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow my Instagram at @myjinxedromance and my Twitter at Charlotte__80, and I will see you in the next video.